every minute in a startup that you're trying to do something, you're expending some resources, money, your time, the patience of your investors, whatever, right? But every time you have that touch point where you're like, oh, here's my offering, no, here's all the ways that I hate it. Only at that point do you recognize, is there an opportunity to kind of improve what you have? But the challenge is like,
in a world of infinite options, how do you decide what's worth building your life around? Not what looks hot on Twitter, and not what your friends are talking about, but what you can't stop thinking about, even when no one's watching. Today's guest on Founders and Builders is Yanda Erlich. Yanda's built 4 startups, sold one of them to LinkedIn, and recently helped scale Weights and Biases to a $1.7 billion acquisition. Yanda today is a general partner at B Capital and recently led their investment in amazing AI companies like Perplexity. And in today's episode, you'll learn how to lean into what comes naturally to you, the big decisions in life, like picking the right co-founder, city and country to live in, or partner. And finally, some super actionable takeaways like negotiation and Yanda's personal cheat sheet, which we'll link in the comments down below. I'm Joe, this is Founders and Builders. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And now let's get into it. Where I wanted to start actually is one of my favorite tweets of yours. Oh. You said, so here's the thing, if you're starting a company or if you're thinking about switching your job, ask yourself what feels fun, looks effortless to you, but looks like hard work to other people. Could you take us into that and how that's shown up in your life?
So many different ways, but so I think I can talk about it personally. I can talk about why this came up in the context of a tweet, which is probably, I don't know, a decade old or something like that. So it's great. Part of the nature of this is just to follow your excitement, right? In general. And I think there was part of my education that was taught that you have to be good at everything, just focus your energy on improving the things you're worse at so that everything is good, But I think the thing I realized at some point is I was having the most fun when I was just putting more energy behind the stuff that I enjoyed doing and the stuff that I felt essentially came easily to me. And I think there's this part of everybody kind of suffers this to some degree, this kind of imposter syndrome aspect of it, which is you look at things that feel fun and effortless to you. And your first thought is oh, these things must just be easy, full stop for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. It's this thing is not valuable. It's fun and effortless for me. It must be not valuable. It must be fun and effortless for everybody. So as a result, there's lots of supply for however much demand there is, and it's not an interesting thing. But then it turns out you look, and a lot of stuff that's fun and effortless for you, other people really hate or find really hard or find really distasteful or boring or whatever. And in some sense, the beauty of capitalism or just market systems is that if everybody got to do the thing that was the most fun and effortless for them, that everybody else thought was painful or annoying or boring, one, you have this vibrant market where this thing that came easily to you is actually valuable to somebody else, but also the general happiness of everybody has gone up because everybody gets to work on the thing that's fun and effortless for them. So for me, a lot of that was spending time on nerd tech stuff, and then a bunch of time spend on kind of understanding why humans think and how human consciousness works and what motivates people and et cetera, which I just thought for the longest time, it was this must be easy for everybody. And then it turns out I met a bunch of people who liked other things that I looked at and I was oh, I wouldn't want to do this, and then they turned around and looked and thought, wow, the stuff that I was doing was valuable, not as easy for them as I perceived it to be for myself. So.
And I think if we try enough things, we can kind of just feel, not necessarily have to reason through why we like something. We just know what we're pulled towards.
How do you know you like something? It's very rarely a thought, right? It's almost always you feel a certain way. It feels effortless. I know the difference between, I don't know, going snowboarding and cleaning my bathroom. If they feel
you love cleaning your bathroom.
Yeah, no, exactly. they feel very different, right? Or I know the difference between having a conversation with somebody who's starting a AI startup and then having a conversation with someone who's starting I don't know, a restaurant or something like that. Like, I'm just going to lean into that AI. So like, it's fun. It's an interesting subject matter. Like, that person's like got something to teach me, et cetera. Like, the time just flies, right? Versus if you told me, oh, you have to do this now, but for a laundromat or something like this, I'd be like, oh my God, like watching the time go by, et cetera, right? And that's not to say that's like, there's a stack ranking of these. Like, someone else might love that physical world business. Yeah. So the beauty is like, lean into the stuff that actually like you enjoy doing and feels easy.
And feels authentic to you, right? Without
Which I think is like, if you like it, that is the, like, in some sense that is the definition of authentic. Is like, don't pretend to do you don't want to do. Just lean into the stuff that like you enjoy doing. Like let yourself be carried into the things that like, if you were post-economic and didn't have to work, but were too young to retire, like, what would you do with your time? And like, try to find a job or a passion or a hobby that like mirrors that in some regards.
Or at least take the next step in that direction.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. I'd love to get your thoughts as well, not just on like what comes from within and what like problems or businesses you feel like pulled to create or to solve, but also like, my personal take is we're living in a time in the world where it's kind of like let's call it the supermarket toothpaste effect, right? Where like back in the 50s, if you went into a supermarket, it was like, there was one toothpaste, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like analysis paralysis. There's like thousands of options for everything. And it feels like the same kind of combinatorics has opened up for what you can spend your time on.
Totally.
What you want to build a business in, never mind what product you build within that. So what advice would you give to people that are really kind of like overwhelmed, you would say, with the number of options of what they could be spending their time working on?
Yeah. I mean, I think the quick advice would be, don't let other people choose for you what you are passionate about. I think this whole concept of like, I call it like the Cheesecake Factory concept, like the menu of the Cheesecake Factory is like 300 pages long or something like that. Like, if you went to the Cheesecake Factory and you're like, I'm going to read through the whole menu before choosing something, you'll be there for a week before you order, right? But if you're like, well, I don't, I like steak. It's like, well, okay, actually now you're down to 2 pages or something like that. So I want to eat sweets or something. It's like, you can kind of limit your options by just letting your interests drive the first filter on that decision. And so I think the thing that I would suggest, frankly, to anybody when they set out to start a business, and I think particularly when there's a lot of noise around, is, who do you want to build for? Like, who do you care about? Whose lives you want to make better? And that could be like, I think part of the beauty of like, one approach is to be like very concrete and generalize from there, right? Because people like talk about like, oh, I want to start a business. There needs to be a large TAM, how many customers like this. And I'm like, no, like individuals, let's get down to it. It's like, okay, who in your life do you know deeply where you really understand, like you feel like you really understand their pains, their problem space, et cetera. Why do you care about them? Why do you want to wake up every day and like solve that person's problems? And then you can expand out, it's like, okay, I know 5, and then like there's probably 100 more like them. And then you build the TAM bottoms up, right? You don't build the TAM by just being like, oh, there's a large market in whatever dog, boarding SaaS or something like that. You're just like, oh, I really like these dogs, like Wizzy and blah, blah. And like, I want their lives to be better. And it's like, you build up from like very concrete examples. And so I think when there's a lot of hubbub, my encouragement is like, don't let like all of that movement distract you from like what drives you personally. And I think if you like, I meditate a bunch, but like, you don't have to meditate to do this. I think if you just pause and think about like, okay, who do I like to hang out with? Like, who do I think about when I have spare time? And so like, and let that drive your decision. I think that's really valuable as a grounding mechanism. So.
We met, and the reason we're here today is because we met in Weights and Biases, a company that you were a super key part of growing, that just got acquired by, CoreWeave. So congrats.
Thank you to you as well.
But prior to that, you actually started your career at Google.
Yep.
Founded 4 different companies. I think sold one of them, Choice Vendor, to LinkedIn.
Yep.
And then you set up Outlier Ventures as a solo GP. So what inspired you to go on that founder journey? And if you could just take us through those key milestones and then move into investing.
All this stuff looks like so thoughtful after the fact, and it was like kind of follow your interests in the path seemed a lot less clear walking it. So I think the first thing, the reason to set out for entrepreneurship, I grew up in Europe at a time where France, time where it didn't feel like that country was like a hubbub of entrepreneurship, right? So like I went and worked for big tech. I went and worked at Microsoft and then at Google, and those all just seemed like such wonderful places to learn. A lot of my like close friends are people that I met while working at these jobs. But there was always this kind of like feeling of like, okay, is this what work is? Like, is this what work feels like? And being in the Bay Area and having gone to business school here, and I got to know folks who had started their own businesses. And I think part of the beauty of that was like you could take this group of people you cared about or this problem space that was like itching you and just directly try to address it, right? You didn't have to be part of some large organization that like might eventually get to that or whatever. It was just like, okay, like let me just take this like directly and try to, and I think that practice itself is also, it's very raw. Like as someone who had like gotten good grades in school and like had done well, et cetera, it's very raw because it like directly exposes you to like all of the mistakes that you have to make on the path to learning how to like satisfy that problem. Like some people get very lucky with startups and it just works, but like I actually think that like failing at this repeatedly is actually really, it's a really lovely practice, right? So I had the first step of this stuff is always the hardest, right? So I was at Google. It had just been on the cover, I think, of like Forbes or Fortune magazine. I'm going to get this wrong, as like the top company to work at. I'd met a group of people. We had started working on some pet projects. And a subset of that group was like, okay, like this pet project actually sounds really fun. Let's like try to turn this thing into something more meaningful. And so I remember like the day that I like decided that I was going to like resign from Google, like, burn the ships to go start working on this business. I was like driving down. I lived in San Francisco at the time, and having like all these second thoughts of like, this place is so great and the people are so smart and, they're paying me a good salary and I get to work on all these important things. And here I want to like set out into the uncertain unknown, like building this like weird thing that I seem to be interested in that I'm not even sure is like a real product, right? But eventually like bit the bullet, did it. And that next startup like didn't work, It was like we made every mistake in the book. Like we didn't understand distribution. We didn't understand product market fit. We made technology issues that like blew up in our face. Like our customers were pissed off at us. Like we had co-founder conflicts. Like all the things that could go wrong, like went wrong. And yet I was like, man, this is fun. Like, it's like, there's this kind of rawness of just like being like on the advent. You're like, you've left the whatever, the safe confines of the village, and you're like out exploring the wilderness, and you're like kind of scared and kind of excited, and it just felt like so real to do it that I was just like, oh, I'm hooked. Like I want to keep doing this. And so, fast forward like a decade of my life spent doing this stuff, right? So, and then how did I get into investing was super random, right? So that first business, even though it was not a viable business, we ended up being able to sell it, making a little bit of money. And once you have a little bit of money, you're like, okay, well, I don't need that much money to live. Like, what am I doing this is? And like, I have friends who like play the stock market, et cetera. And I was just like, kind of the same idea of like following your passions. Like I remember at some point I set up like a Schwab or E-Trade account. I logged on and I was just like looking at these stocks, and it's like my, eyes were rolling to the back of my head, and I was like, I just can't be interested to look at this stuff. Like it's like this seems exhausting to do this. So I was like, okay, no, I'm not gonna do that. I don't have to like, I like nice things, but not that many nice things. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna buy my way out of this problem. And then I had left, like I'd graduated from Stanford. I'd gone to Google. I'd left both of those things. I'd sought out to be an entrepreneur. And what ended up happening is people would who were on the cusp of that decision, somehow found their way to me, right? They were like, oh, well, what other lunatic decided to do this, right? And so I got to meet a handful of folks that way. And so, they came up and they were like, well, how was your decision and what were you, satisfied about and dissatisfied about? And just, kind of break down my decision process to them. And at the end, they were like, oh, that was so super valuable advice. And I was like, well, I'm glad. Like, I don't know what I'm doing either, right? But like, I'm glad you enjoy this. And then, we would get to some conversation where they were like, well, I'm going to start this thing. Like, your advice is valuable. Would you like to invest? And I was like, oh, that's fun. Like, I get to I could put, bet on individual humans that I have like a direct relationship with where we've met them. They're passionate about some problem space. They think it's useful to be in some relation with me, and I can I can back that thing instead of some nameless stock kind of thing.
Anonymous stock ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay, I'll do that, right? So I started doing that, and then a lot of it is luck, right? Those people were smart. As a result, those investments did well. As a result, I was like, oh, maybe I'm not that bad at this. I was just like, it turns out having smart friends is really important. And so that created this other avenue of investing being a possibility. And for the longest time, I just did that on the side as an angel. Like I was running these businesses. And then occasionally I would meet somebody through that network. And then at some point, I remember talking to my now wife, then girlfriend, and she was like, I kind of some of the happiest times that I've seen you is when you're hanging out with these people that you're invested in and advising and et cetera. And it's like, you're liking this startup stuff, but I really see you light up when you're doing this investment stuff. And I was like, oh, sometimes it's nice to have the view from a different vantage point. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting point.
From the people that know as well.
Yeah, that know you well, but kind of see you from a different angle, et cetera. And so there was a transition point in 2017 where I had an opportunity to kind of explore a different career path. And Mercy at the time was like, hey, I've been telling you for blah, blah. It's you should maybe consider doing that. And I took it seriously, and that created an opportunity to go become a professional investor. And that opened up a bunch of other paths, including getting into closer relationship with devices, et cetera. So all this stuff, after the fact, it seems all so well planned, but the reality is it's just you're just walking the path one step at a time, trying to figure out whether to go left or right.
And from what I remember, you were one of the original investors as an angel in Weights and Biases. And for those folks that don't know, Weights and Biases is an AI developer toolkit company that both you and I have, been a part of.
Yeah.
And you joined at the seed. You were part of Coatue then, and then you participated in Weights and Biases Series A.
Yeah, so I angel invested in the seed round mostly as a bet on Lucas. Lucas and I have been very good friends for a long time. He started his first business, Figure 8, which was started as Crowdflower right around the time that I was starting my second business. And so we were founder friends. And both of those founder journeys, I would say, were their own kind of rocky roller coasters. But through that process, so one, it was really nice to have a friend because that journey is rocky and lonely and scary and et cetera. And it's kind of nice to know that you're not the only person going through all those things. There's, anyone exploring that frontier is probably feeling that range of emotions. The second thing is I got to see Lucas just really evolve as an executive and a founder. And he has this really, and we can talk about this at length, he has this really deep passion for the machine learning practitioner, that AI technical person, right? And so when he sought out to start another business to space, I was like, oh man, I was too poor / didn't know you when you were starting Crowdflower, but now I've got a little bit of money, please let me invest some money. So I got to invest as an angel. And at that point, I was still running my last business, Parsable. Fast forward about a year, I then joined Coatue as a general partner, helped them launch that early stage venture fund, and we were starting to make investments out of that fund. And in January, I went on a walk with Lucas, and he's like, "Oh, I'm starting to think about raising a Series A." And I was like, "Well, listen, I'm at Coatue now. We have a venture fund. We're just setting out." And literally, I think that venture fund had closed in December of 2018. I was going on a walk with Lucas in January 2019. And he was like, well, listen, like we've got all these like big name, funds that are chasing after us for the Series A of Weights and Biases. And I was like, well, you could take them, and that would be totally understandable, right? They're better investors, they're fancier names, or we could work together, right? And we're old friends, so like that played a part. And so I got the opportunity for Coatue to lead the Series A in Weights and Biases in January 2019. It was, I think, the first major check that we wrote out of that fund, and then be on the board for a couple of years and then join and all that jazz. But a lot of that is like, tails back to like the relationship with Lucas that started 10 plus years before that.
Surround yourself with smart friends, like you said. Yeah.
Or just like, I think for me, it's like not purposefully, right? It's like I surround myself with smart friends because I like them, it's like, that's it. It's like, it's fun to hang out with smart people. Like, I don't know. It's like, they have interesting things to say that, they're always like teaching me some stuff. It's like, it's just fun. So.
And if I remember right, when I was reading, before we had this session together today, your dad was a computer scientist, he kind of like infamously said to you, "Don't worry about AI, Yanda, because like AI is always 5 years too early. Like this thing's not going to work." So what gave you that conviction in Weights and Biases and in Lucas? What did you see?
Yeah. So I think So it's a funny story, right? So I was like a real nerd. I guess I still am a real nerd, but like I don't know. I was reading Marvin Minsky books when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I remember like telling my dad, I was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to do AI," and it was like whatever, early 80s or something. And my dad was like, "You should study computer science. Computer science is fantastic, but like, you should really stay away from AI. If you look at AI, since like AI has been around since the 1950s, and it's like always 5 years away." And there's this feeling that it's like always going to be like just the mirage at the end of the horizon. And the funny thing is, like, he made that comment to me, I don't know, probably late 80s, early 90s. He was right for another 30 years. Like, quite accurate. Like I took some AI classes in undergrad, and like all of those techniques like didn't work, right? So like it's finally here. But I think the bet on Lucas in 2017 and again in 2019 was really a bet on him, right? It's like the bet on Weights and Biases was a bet on Lucas, and Lucas had this the beauty of that crew, and I'll speak about Lucas very particularly because I know him the best. It's like it almost feels like he like exists to make the life of like ML practitioners better. Like he worked on ML at Yahoo, he worked on ML at PowerSet, he started Crapflower working on ML. That was like a whole roller coaster of an adventure. It ended up with like a successful exit where, by my calculations, and I don't know his like financials specifically, like you probably could have stopped working, but like turned around, started another ML another startup trying to make the life of an ML practitioner. So like when I sat with him and he's like, "Listen, like we're on this cusp where like this stuff is really going to start to work, and this role that right now is like a niche role inside of organizations is going to become this thing that like every organization is going to have like people doing ML, and it's going to be just like like design and mobile app development. Before it, like it was a small thing, and then it was a big thing, and then it became a thing that like everybody had to do. It was like almost like a necessary."
Yep.
And he said that to me in like 2017, 2019, and it was like there were no signals, right? At the time, I think even in 2019 when we invested, when Coatue invested, Weights and Biases had two customers. It was OpenAI and Toyota Research Institute.
Some customers.
Pretty impressive, but like, OpenAI long before ChatGPT, when they were like doing robots solving Rubik's Cubes. Toyota Research Institute was like trying to work on a self-driving car like long before self-driving. Like it really felt like they were like two academic, like kind of basically like academic labs toying around with stuff that may or may not work, right? But Lucas was like, no, you don't understand. Like that's the snapshot right now, but like this is, I've seen this pattern before. I feel it with ML. Like we've had like some of these kind of like academic developments. It really feels like people are going to start to want to build the stuff to take it to production. And when people do that, they're going to need tooling that helps them get all the way there. And we think we can be that tooling because we understand these folks better than anybody else because we've been these folks, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, I don't know if that's true, but like, man, this space better than anybody else. You're super passionate about it. You're super smart. I've just seen you like grind out one of the hardest like startup stories on the face of the planet. Like, this feels like the bet to take, right? And the funny thing is that like in the places, and I still have the investment thesis that I took to the Coatue partnership. All the places I was wrong in that thesis, it's because I wasn't optimistic enough about how fast this stuff would happen. So like I'm glad we made the investment. We made a bunch of money, but even then things happen faster, bigger, broader, etc. And I can't guarantee that in every universe that would have been the case, right? But it's like, man, those are the bets to take. You know, it's like okay, you believe in a founder, and then like even their optimistic view wasn't optimistic enough. You know, that's what an experience.
And I think it just, you've said this before. I remember we kind of like, as humans, we're not used to seeing exponentials.
I have no idea how to process it.
And you also called it, you know, when we talk about like which market should you build a company in?
Yeah.
You said look for the sneaky big markets.
That's right.
What's a sneaky big market?
Well, it's just like I think part of it is like, you know, tie yourself to founder market fit. But the other thing is just like the market that is large and obvious, everybody's going after. I'm kind of seeing that now a little bit, and you know, all of the AI startups going after the same thing. You know, I don't know. There's like how many AI SDR companies out there now at this point, right? So like the very large market are like, you know, the ones that are obvious, everyone's going after, right? But the ones like you know, like the story I just described with Weights and Biases, where it's like you have this insight about where that market can be tomorrow that most people think is wrong, but because you're steeped in it, because you care about the people, because you have studied the trends, etc., you kind of know that like it's going to go the distance in a way where people think like, oh, that's kind of niche, etc. Like I think one of the examples I like to use on this is Figma, right? So, you know, when Figma started, people were like design, that's not a market. Like, you know, like that's like one or two dudes in the engineering team, you know, do design, right? It's like nothing IPO.
No, but really, that's how it was looked at.
No, for sure, right? And here was a guy who was like, I'm just gonna build for them, right? And everybody was like, well, you know, Photoshop's in there, but like, look, they're doing professional photographers, they're doing like they're not just going after design. Design feels too small, right? And Dylan was like, no, that's a, you know, much as there's only one right now, it's going to be a thing and everybody's going to care, et cetera. And like, he was totally right. And so I think a lot of this stuff is like just kind of being steeped enough in the problem space that you care about to see the patterns that people like don't see yet. And then having conviction in yourself to trust those patterns, even when everybody tells you like that's stupid or niche-y or you're going to build a small business or whatever, right? And then because it takes a while to build a business, right? So it's like it like by the time it's obvious,
it's priced in.
You're ready. No one else is, right? And like I remember right in whatever 2020, 2021, like when we saw this like drove of Weights and Biases competitors that were like, oh, I'm going to do like, you know, like production monitoring and experiment tracking. And it's like, too late, guys. Like we built that, you know, X many years ago. We're ready. You're just starting now because you were waiting until it was obvious big, and Lucas started building when it was sneaky big. Hard to compete in that situation.
Super quick one from me. Every week, as you know, we ask our listeners what is one tool or one AI product that they couldn't live without. And this week, it's Lightricks. If you love editing videos or pushing creative boundaries in general, you have to check out their new product, LTX Studio. LTX is an end-to-end platform for not just video generation, but also editing. You can create scenes, storyboards, even full production video content just from text prompts, and then you can tweak and polish it to get exactly the effect that you're looking for. It's literally like dreaming up a scene and then having the tools right there to bring it to life right in front of you. The awesome thing for me is that a couple of episodes ago, we had Yaron Inga, the CTO and co-founder of Lightricks, and if you're interested in checking that episode out, we'll put it at the end of this video. But for now, let's get back into it. You said something else I remember at one of the offsites, which I found really insightful. You said, and Weights and Biases kind of followed this exact trajectory, but it was as we were on the journey. And what you said was like every shift in technology starts off as like a specialized set of skills
That's right.
that a company needs to outsource.
That's right.
Right? There's some like somebody at the frontier of what's possible. They have like so much sunk cost of knowledge into that field that it's better for you in terms of transaction cost to just hire them.
Yeah.
Then it becomes like an agency that you can go to. And then from the agency, it graduates to like a person that you hire, and then it's for everyone. And like, if you look at Canva or Figma, it's exactly
100%. Yeah.
Like who hires just designers now to only do design?
That's right. And like, you know, I'll show my age. Like that used to be the case with software engineering, right? Like most companies that didn't build software as a thing had zero software engineers inside their company. If they needed a piece of bespoke software done, they hired a consultancy, right? And then that was the case for mobile apps. I remember like the era where there were all these mobile app agencies that were like, I'm going to build a mobile app for you, like, and then design, and they're like, not like Kentucky Fried Chicken has software developers today, right? Or whatever. You know, it's like this is just a thing now. It's like part of building a company. You need to have this stuff inside the business, and yeah, and that was the same, you know, like in the early days of ML, people had these like, you know, there were these consultancies and you were like, oh, you want to build an AI model? Like outsource it to these 3 brains over there who are like the only people who know how to build AI models. And I think Lucas's insight was like, well, you know, that's not the end state of this. Like eventually this becomes how you do business. And if it becomes how you do business, it becomes core to every company or most companies. And then you need people inside your company that know how to do this stuff. So.
I think what's interesting about this is rather than looking at the market as like one static blob of like everything moves together, there's this like wave of different types of adopters, right? That's so like, let's say ML tooling, let's say OpenAI, Mistral, and Cohere were the first to move on weights and biases, you know, as an example. That there is this kind of long tail of much larger companies that are often way more profitable if you were to build a business just around those.
Yes.
So that point that you mentioned there around like you being the specialist and being able to create an agency around that absolutely exists today for the enterprise.
Totally. Yeah. For now.
And
we'll see, you know, in general, I will say agencies are always kind of the tip of the spear, I think, of new types of technology adoption, but they're rarely, I think they're rarely the steady state for like a thing, for like a large thing. It tends to pervade inside the organization. Like it becomes so core to how organizations need to operate that they end up needing to in-house at least part of it.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about like follow your intuition, follow what you're uniquely, authentically interested in, and you will get to the frontier. Also,
and even if you don't, I mean, the beauty about this is like, there's no guarantees in life, right? You could like start 15 failed companies and none of them could work, right? But if you follow what you're uniquely interested in, probably that journey, even though it didn't end up in success, was still pleasurable in some way. And like the interesting thing about life is that like the destination is just like we end up in a box with people like our friends and family like crying around that box, right? Like if you're just optimizing for the outcome, you're gonna have a pretty time, right? Like the ultimate outcome is pretty dark, you know. So it's like you gotta enjoy the path, right? And it's like if you pick something that you're really passionate about, you care a little less, you know. Like pick your favorite sport, right? Whatever, right? Like when you're playing your favorite sport, you like care that you win every game? Like kind of no. Like of course it's fun to win, but like if you love tennis, if you're a great game of tennis, you lose at the end. You're not like, oh man, I should have never played tennis because I didn't win the game. You're like, no, I had a fun time. You know, it's like, so the same is true as work. Like if you follow something that you're really passionate about, it's like the outcome it matters. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it matters less than if like that's the only, like it's like, oh, I hate this job, but if I made a lot of money in 10 years and like maybe it would have been worth it. It's like, oh, do something else. You know?
I think I agree with that, as long as you don't run like blow up risk, right? Like along the journey of building what feels authentically you, that you can like sustain yourself, that you have some baseline of.
But I think in part that is like it. I think you're way more likely to sustain yourself if you do something that you're like deeply passionate and excited about, because somehow, and I don't know, like, the human being is a weird beast, right? But like there's that internal drive that comes from something that feels really fun, that it, even though the, if I measured the like joules coming off of you, like the amount of energy expended may be the same as some unpleasurable task. The reality is it feels more effortless if you're having fun.
Totally. And to your point, like we've all had those experiences where we're actually using energy, but we feel like we're getting more energy back. And I think that's a pretty good proxy.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, going the distance, like it matters to do that, right? It's like, I don't pick a sports analogy. It's like if you're asked to play a sport for some duration of time, right? Like you're like, oh, you're gonna have to play some sport for 4 hours, right? You're gonna have way easier time if you pick a sport you like, than the sport you like the least. It's like, for me, it's like I hate running. If somebody was like, oh, you got to run for 4 hours, I'm like, oh my god, snowboarding for 4 hours, like, yeah, let's go. Like, like it's like I'm spending about as much energy. It doesn't feel that way at all. Right? So.
One of the other tweets that I loved, you said, a startup is not a company. It's an experiment to see if a company deserves to exist. And until product market fit, the speed that you're testing these different hypotheses is more important than anything.
Yeah. I mean, you're building for a market, right? So the first thing is, I think people think like, oh, I incorporated, I have a company now. And it's like, no, you filled out some paperwork.
You mean we can't get the beanbags?
Yeah, I mean,
we need the office dog, man.
You can, but that does not mean that you have a company yet, right? All you have is like, you have a box to run some experiments in. And then maybe if you run a bunch of good experiments, like then you deserve to like, take the risk of employing other people and et cetera, all that jazz, right? And then the second thing is that like, company building, like almost every human endeavor is a conversation with the universe, right? A conversation with the world, where it's like, you can't like lock yourself in a room and be like, I think people need blah. So I'm just going to not talk to anyone, build blah. And then just be like, okay, here it is, like, hope you like it, like, or you have to like it because I built it or something like that. Like the reality is that like, you have a perspective on what the world needs, but like the world knows better, right? And so like, but if you build nothing, nobody's going to engage with you because they're like, well, why should I talk to you? You got nothing to give me, right? You got to build something. You bring that as an offering to the market and be like, oh, do you like this? And they'd be like, well, this is broken. That's like, I don't like this. And if you listen, they're actually, the minute they're complaining, they're actually like telling you how to improve your product. And then you can go back and like iterate over and over and over again. Right. But the challenge is like every minute in a startup that you're trying to do something, you're like kind of expending some resources, right? Money, your time, the patience of your investors, whatever, right? But every time you have that touch point where you're like, oh, here's my offering. No, here's all the ways that I hate it. Like that's an opportunity. Only at that point do you recognize like, is there an opportunity to kind of improve what you have, right? And so the idea is just like build your machine so that you can maximize the number of those touch points. Because if you can do that quickly, and even if you improve only a tiny amount at every iteration, you're going to end up with a fantastic product at the end. If you do that really slowly, you either have to make big leaps of improvement or have like really strong gut intuition for what works, because like you're just not going to get that many at bats.
I think a lot of people are talking about every time OpenAI release a new model, just how well these new models generalize. And like, headlines are OpenAI crushes 100 new startup ideas with the release of like 4.0 or whatever it is. What is your message to people that kind of like hear this, I want to say like nihilistic, there's no point in even trying, you feel like you're already late to the game. There's this super smart set of like, base compensation, $1 million PhDs. Like, how can I compete with that? What's your message to them?
Okay. So I think two things. Like one, like entrepreneurship isn't a job; it's like an illness, basically. If your choice is like, I'm going to start a company, or I can take a multi-million-dollar package at like one of these big labs, and you're really actively considering those two options, take the multi-million-dollar package at the big lab. Because you don't actually like entrepreneurship is almost like this itch that you like have to scratch. Otherwise, you're gonna be like you don't want to end up in a situation where you're like, oh, I got too old to start a company, and man, I wish I had blah blah blah, and like I had this great idea and I never tried, and etc. Like you have to be kind of like regret minimizing away from that end state where you're like, oh, I really want to do this, like I gotta try, right? Because the reality is like, I'm sure it's really hard. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes. It's gonna feel really draining. It's gonna consume more time. It's gonna eat at your work-life balance. Like, there's all these negatives of being an entrepreneur, right? So it's like, unless you really feel like you need to do it, like, don't do it, because it's hard, right? But if you feel like you need to do it, then also don't let the market dissuade you from this like internal drive, right? Like, and the reality is like, listen, like before OpenAI became the darling thing, it was like Google was the darling thing and they had everything figured out. And before that, Microsoft had everything figured out. And before that, IBM had everything figured out. And guess what? Like, if Bill Gates had listened about that with IBM, he would never start Microsoft, and Larry and Sergey had started that about Bill Gates, they would never have started Google, and Sam and Elon and whatever would have never started OpenAI. So it's like, hey, you could be the next dude, you know, it's like, or gal or whatever. It's like, don't let other people decide your preferences or your possibilities. Like, decide them yourself. But if you're just doing this to be like a rich and famous CEO, like those are the wrong reasons. Like, it really has to feel like some like internal drive to go do something.
We've talked about the kind of like how you align with your internal drive. We've talked about like how you surround yourself with people you enjoy spending time with. But one of the things I'm really passionate about with the Founders and Builders podcast is I feel we're at a time in the world where more people are coming into the world, let's say out of education, with more access to unlimited information.
Yeah.
Tools with literally no barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Most of them are free. And the question is not how do I build the thing? It's like, what do I build?
Totally.
And who do I work with? And I just want to get your thoughts on like, just generally, how do you stack the cards in your favor in life?
Yeah.
You know, where do you live? Who do you spend time with?
Yeah.
The partner that you spend time with. Like, how have you thought about stacking the cards?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one, the beauty of this statement about just kind of like information and intelligence and tools becoming more available, that's almost like, if you trace the arc of human history, it's just like kind of a continuous, it's not just AI or just the internet. It's like, there used to be a time we didn't have tools or power or electricity or like this.
We had some big rocks.
We're just stacking innovation on top of innovation on top of innovation, right? And then I think there's this like really interesting, you know, there's this adage of children are smarter than their parents, right? I don't think it's because we're like getting bigger brains or whatever, right? It's just like the children are coming into existence at a time where they're starting out with like the more and better tools from day zero, right? So they grow accustomed to them, they know how to use them, they become like facile with them, and then that evolution continues, and then their kids, you know, have even more tools, etc. It's like that drives like a lot of intelligence is like smart tool use, right?
Totally.
Which
also like standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly. Yeah, smart tool. Which I think it's so funny when you think about like a lot of the innovations that are happening in AI now around like memory and tool use and etc. It's like we're just trying to do for AI what we do for our own kids. It's like, oh, this is great. Like, we'll give you more powerful tools. Like, you'll become smarter, right? Fantastic. So that whole thing is just like, it's a continuum, and hopefully it never ends, right? Or like it ends at the heat death of the universe or whatever. And then in general, like how you stack, right? I think, you know, there's a lot of small and big things that you can do, but I think and I could list off like a bunch that I'm glad I did in my life, right? But I want to caveat that like, it really comes back to, again, like doing the things that like really feel authentic and passionate to you, right? Because like, like one of the things, like if you want to be in AI, I could be like, oh, you should move to San Francisco, right? Like, there's a huge talent density in San Francisco. There's a bunch of people doing AI startups. You can go to dinner with your friends and end up in a conversation with the people sitting at the table next to you that are really smart researchers that you would otherwise never have met. And it just like increases serendipity and all this other stuff, right? Like, all that is lovely and wonderful. That said, if you love being, if you live in London and your family's in London, your friends are in London, and your really smart buddies are in London, and a lot of enjoyment you get out of being close to those people, like, don't move to San Francisco. Like, you can start a company there. Plenty of great companies have been started there, right? So it's like, all of this advice is kind of like useful. All of this advice is useful in the abstract, but like you really have to like practice it in your own like individual circumstance, right?
But if I asked you, going back to it, like the cards that because you can connect the dots looking back, right? That you're glad that you stacked in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, I think top of the list is being with like a patient and supportive partner. Like by far top of the list, right? It's like, it's such an awesome, like, life is a weird experience, right? And so like Mercy and I met, like, I was like, I guess relatively old in the context of like when people meet, like we didn't meet in high school or something like this, right? But like, but I think the minute you get to go through life with someone who like you can come home to and be like, today it was weird, let me tell you all the things, and they give you like a loving but slightly different perspective on your experience, that's really that's a really powerful perspective. And I think, I don't know if this is generally true, but I would surmise that like like if you look at very successful entrepreneurs, my guess is most of them are in committed relationship. Like, I don't think there's like, maybe some, but like I can't think of any right off the top of my head right now that are like super hard charging founders and are single. And I think that there is that like kind of uniqueness of that thing. I think the next thing is just like kind of like picking things that you're, like, I don't know. I consider myself fortunate that like the things that I'm naturally interested in also happen to be like technical and economic in value. There used to be this whole period of time, certainly when I was growing up, where people were like, oh, go into the sciences, like study computer science and EE and et cetera. And like, don't do the humanities, like, what are you going to do with that English degree or whatever, right? But like, actually, I don't know, like, right, with LLMs, like the gal with the English degree might be like actually more productive than we thought, right? It's like it turns out actually like stating things in like very clear, concise prompts is like a really powerful tool, right? So again, like, I think it's great if like the sport you're playing happens to be the sport that's in vogue or right now, right? But don't let that, like, again, like, don't let the universe decide your authenticity. Like, if you want to go study English, go study English. And like, it turns out that like the universe, not in every case, but like the idea is like, if you stay authentic to your passion, like that often doesn't close the doors that you think it closes, right? Versus, I do think that like constantly having your head on a swivel, being like, what do other people think this is cool? That can be very risky, because there will always be something cooler that you're not doing, or some other thing that like, if you let your passions be decided externally, like you can kind of be on that rat race forever without taking a break, and without actually like spending enough time at anything to get really good in order to be successful.
Yeah, you need to go deep enough to at least find out. Yeah. And I think we're in this crazy time, man, where it's like, you only have to open up your Twitter feed and you instantly feel like nowhere near as good as you should, or like, have achieved as much as the people
you
online.
You certainly can't. Yeah, it can certainly try to create that feeling in you. Yeah. And you have to resist it. Yeah.
Exactly. And you just feel like that, there's so much content, there's so much progress, everything's happening so quickly. Yeah. It's maybe a nice segue into your practice of meditation and being able to distance yourself from your thoughts. I know you've spoken a lot about this in the past, and you also shared publicly, like, your findings from being on this journey in meditation. Yeah. What inspired you to start meditating? Yeah. And what does it look like today?
Yeah. Wow. That's a fun question as well. So I think the inspiration came honestly from, as all things, originally from discomfort, right? So I grew up kind of in or at least like, I got to this point in early college or something like this, where I had like kind of convinced myself that like, my sense door, like my sense organs were just like windows. I was perceiving the world exactly as it was, and like everything that, like, I was like as I said, a nerd. I was like, oh, everything that's true will eventually be provable, and happiness is what you get when you're like successful at things, and etc. And then there's like a series of events that happen. Actually, I joke about this, like, most strangely, Gödel's incompleteness theorem was like the earliest one of them that like kind of cracked like that set of axioms that I thought was true about the world, like, might not be true, right? It was like, and I think the first one was like, oh, actually, it turns out like mathematically that like everything that's true is not provable. And I was like, wait, what? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that makes me sad. Like, what? Why, right? And so, when you believe something for a long time, and then the world, the universe kind of proves to you that like that belief is like maybe wrong, right? At least as a scientist, I was like, okay, well, let me go like update my priors. Like how like if that is not true, then like what is true? Like,
what else don't I know as well?
Yeah, what else don't I know about myself, about reality, about et cetera, right? And so, and it turns out like you if you want to do that kind of in an inward looking way, you eventually end up to these kind of like contemplative or meditative practices. And I had friends, fortunately, that were doing this stuff, and they were like, oh, have you considered just like watching your own mind? And I would say like the funny thing is like even the first couple of years that I was doing meditation, I was like probably doing meditation wrong. Like I was too strivey even in the process of like, so I was like missing the thing that I should be looking for exactly. Yeah. I was like too focused. I was too focused on the outcome, and it turns out that it's like not really an outcomes-based practice. But at some point, and I think really big props to like Sam Harris coming out and making an app and all this stuff. Like at some point, I somehow like collided with this like technique, this approach to meditation that really clicked with me, for like watching your own awareness. And that was, I don't know, 2015, 16 thereabouts or something like that. And that's really kind of got like I've gone down the rabbit hole from that perspective, right? I think there are like many benefits of it. I think there's a practical benefit, which is that like I'm much more at peace with like reality as it is, like as it presents itself. And so if I'm having like an uncomfortable conversation, or if my body feels uncomfortable because like I ate cheese when I shouldn't have, or I'm scared about some decision, it's like I'm okay. Part of me is okay with that discomfort. So I think that's really valuable. I think the second thing is I've had like some like pretty significant insights about like who I think I am and what reality is and et cetera, that I think just like make me pretty happy as a human, like peaceful. Like, not happy in the sense of like I'm riding a roller coaster, but like there's this like certain level of kind of like acceptance of the world. And that I think there's benefits as you get older, as like friends and family get older, people or get sick, et cetera. Like I think there's like having that level of peace and acceptance is really valuable. And I think it also helps. I think there's this trend in AI, which we interact with, around this like, oh, what happens if we build like ASI and it takes away all of our jobs? I don't know. I'm kind of at peace with all that stuff. Like that's not to say that I don't think that those risks are zero. It's just like there's risks to everything, and I'm kind of at peace with risks. Like those are, yeah. So I don't know. It's been useful.
I just wanted to touch on this topic of leverage, because I don't think it gets enough airtime, and I think you will have some really unique perspectives on it. So leverage, broadly defined as like for a unit of energy in, you get like multiples of energy, multiples of output, right? I think, one piece of content that really inspired me, Naval, around like, all types of permissioned leverage. You've got capital. People can give you money, you can invest it. You've got people that can work with you. But these new permissionless types of leverage, code and media, which are running while you sleep, people still don't realize just how powerful that is to get multiples on your input. How have you thought about, or how have you changed your view on like how you use leverage, both as an investor, but also in companies?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I will say I'm so happy for like AI to exist. I just think like for like, if you think code is leverage, like, man, models are like that on steroids, right? It's just a wonderful thought partner to have. And I will say, like, I love asking an expert, right? When I have a question about something from like anything from like whatever, like Buddhist philosophy to, like, what does this MRI result from a family member mean to like, where should I go on my next vacation? Like I've had this strong desire. I was like, okay, well, somebody must know better than me. Instead of me doing all this research, I can like, let me ask a really smart friend, right? Like, let me ask my doctor friend on this MRI thing. Let me ask my like, really smart, meditation friend on this. But now I get to like ask AI on all of them. And that's not to say that I still don't reach out to those friends. I do, because it's fun to get different perspectives, and AI has one perspective. But like the instantaneousness of like being able to like pull on any thread and just like get really smart is really, really powerful. Because I think one of the like really wonderful bits of permissionless leverage you can get is just improving your own intelligence around something, or your knowledge, or your pattern matching skills, etc. And you often have to do that by like getting data from the outside. Like you can't do that in a closed box, right? I'm going to sound like a broken record on a bunch of this stuff, right? But like a lot of these other bits around like capital and people and etc. Like it turns out that if you do something that you like feel really authentic and passionate about, and you're really committed to doing it, and there's a good Goethe quote about this, right? At least quote attributed to Goethe about this, right? Which is just like commitment has like magic in it, etc. It's like once you commit yourself to something, help just kind of like appear, like people like you kind of emanate that like you're gonna do this thing, you're talking about it, you're excited about it, and then like people who like you didn't even know could help you or might want to join you, like somehow kind of like fall into your orbit, right? And I've certainly seen that happen in my own life, like both inside my job, career changes, all these aspects where I think the more you kind of like are committed around a purpose that you're really excited about, like the universe like helps you out. I don't know why, right? It just does. It's kind of cool. And so that kind of goes back to like, if you're going to do something, like pick something you're passionate about and really commit to it, because like you think you're going to have to do it alone, and you kind of have to feel that way to commit, right? It's like, oh, I'm not going to get all this help. Like but then you end up getting a bunch of help anyway. That comes out of nowhere, right? Like I remember sitting on a plane next to something, and they were like, oh, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm starting this company, blah, 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 whatever. They ended up being a major buyer. And I was just like, had I not been that excited about this company that I was starting, I would have not talked about it to a random seatmate, and then they wouldn't have ended up buying my software for like, I don't know, $500,000 or something like that early on in the life of the business. So it's just like
people can feel it, and these, the butterfly effect.
Exactly.
The consequences that you wouldn't have even foresaw.
That's right. And people are attracted to it in this kind of cool way.
Yeah. Last question from me, Yanda, and this has been so much fun. So thanks again for coming on. Yeah. If we could fast forward now, let's say 30 years, and you and I are sitting next to each other on the proverbial deck chair, we look up and imagine in San Francisco we could still see the stars and there wasn't all this pollution in the air. And I turned to you,
more stars. Who knows? Like, who knows what AI will do to our environment?
And I turned to you and I said, Yanda, what was it all for?
I'll give you the very honest answer, which will be very possibly unsatisfying, which is like the journey that's all it's for. Like, it's like life is just a series of moments. And if you just pay attention in those series of moments, like that's the fun. Like, it's like you're just kind of like, I don't know, give you a shitty analogy. Like pick your favorite movie, the movie ends and I'm like, what was that movie for? There's not any like minute. You can't be like, oh, minute 2:41, or like, oh, that part at the end where they kissed. It's like, no, it's the whole movie. And it's the whole movie, like bit by bit. It's just like, it's the experience. It's the experience of going through the experience that matters, right? With all the nuance and the HD and the happy parts and the difficult parts that then yielded to happy parts, and like the people that you accumulated along the way and all this stuff. So the journey is what it was for. Like there's no like the ultimate destination is just like lights out in a box, It's just like the journey is all that matters.
Yanda, thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate it.